Hi everyone. Today I wanted to do a video on showing some beginner watercolor supplies that I've been gathering up over the past few months with this quarantine and being stuck at home. I subscribed to Skillshare since quarantine began because there's one thing in particular I've been wanting to learn for a number of years and just hadn't had the time to, and that was watercolor florals. And I've just really been wanting to do more with florals. When I was a teenager and a little bit through college, I was in a lot of art, not just art at school, but I also had art after school programs and museum things and art societies I was in ever since junior high school. And I've always loved art, and florals were always my favorite. I used to draw a lot, and I would say decent at it. I'm not gonna say I was like greatest artist in the world or anything. No, don't expect that from me. But in 2008, when I had my stroke and everything pretty much changed with my right hand, which is my dominant hand that I write and draw with, I quit drawing at that point, and I started depending totally upon my electronic machine and digital and my computer. But now that some of that motor skill is back, I want to see what I can use and how much of it I can develop back over time. So that's why I bought these supplies. But I'm making this video for two reasons. One, to help beginners like myself. This took several months of research of exactly what I wanted to buy, because when I went into the store initially and looked at the number of watercolor brushes available versus, what to buy for watercolor versus what to buy for acrylic, it can get rather exhausting trying to look at all of that and overwhelming. Also, what watercolors I wanted to start off with. So I just wanted to create a video for beginners so they have something to reference like myself, but also somewhere where I can send people to look back. If they're wondering what supplies I'm using, I can send you guys back to this video and you can see where I got the items and about the price point of what each of those are. So a little bit with my history. If you haven't watched my channel for a long time, I started off on this channel with this particular palette. It was the Peerless Watercolor palette. It was a huge hit probably back around 2014 or so. And the cards that come in the palette are much bigger than this. This is just what I cut out with a punch. And this was my to-go palette. I took this with us when we went to Ecuador. So I've used this one for a number of years, and as you can tell, it still has plenty of vibrant color that can be used. Another thing I did for a while was, those of you that are into scrapbooking, you might remember these stamps by Prima Marketing and Julie Nutting. She created these paper doll stamps, and then she had this watercolor set, which is for hair and skin tones. And so it's browns and blacks and peaches. So I have this set of watercolor pencils for a number of years that I used just to color in stamps. And if you're just getting started, that might be something you want to look at, is coloring in line drawings with watercolor pencils. I find that I have a lot more control with a pencil than I do with a brush. And so that's why in the very beginning, I really leaned towards watercolor pencils. So then also this set here by Prismacolor, I've had this set probably a good 5 or 6 years now. And these are all watercolors as well. So don't confuse these with their Prismacolor pencils. They're wax pencils. That's totally different. You'll specifically want to look for watercolor pencils. So those are the ones I started with initially. And then as time went on, these cute little palettes started surfacing on the market. And some of the first ones I bought were by Jane Davenport, since I loved the Peerless ones so much. When she released these little tins at Michael's, I picked up a few of those sets. This one here is the Glitz, I think. Yeah, Glitz C palette. And so I did a video or two on making a color wheel with some of these palettes. This one is the Bright palette. And so again, this one makes really good, this is good for florals because you can get a really bright purple out of this since it uses magenta, yellow, and a cyan. This Brights palette will really give you those bright florals, those fuchsia florals, those bright purple florals. This palette is very good for that. And honestly, I don't remember the name of this one, but this one is like a real neutral one. And I'm sorry, I wish I could remember the name of it, but I use this mainly for like fall, acorns, pumpkins, trees, things like that. So that's something I've had in my stash for years, and all I used with those were these watercolor brushes. So these two here are part of the Jaden Davenport line that I found at Michael's. And then these, I think I got from Blitzy, which I don't even think they exist right now anymore. But these are from Kuretake. And so these are 3 different types. Like this one is a flat, this is kind of a thicker round, and then this is a fine tip. So these were really good about putting on, say, a nice big wash of color, but I never felt like I had a ton of control with these, and it could just be me, lack of technique, lack of practice. So don't let it scare you away. It is great to take for travel because you can get water on the go and you don't have to carry a big jar or a water bottle with you or anything like that. So that's what I started off with in the very beginning. But now I'm really wanting to get into the more detailed, controlled watercolor from the sketch process all the way through the paint process. So some of the items that I got to help me with the sketch process is, one is from Arteza, and Arteza gave this one to me, but it is called their it's their Graphite transfer paper. Now, just to warn you ahead of time, this Graphite transfer paper by Arteza is very dark. So I don't necessarily recommend using it right out the gate for watercolor or gouache, but maybe for acrylic paints. Or in my case, why I'm recommending it is for if you know you're going to outline your watercolor image in black pen or a brown pigment pen, something really dark, maybe a dark blue, then it doesn't matter if pencil lines are showing through the watercolor because you're going to be covering those up with a pigment pen anyway. So that's why I'm recommending that one. If you don't want any pencils showing through your watercolor, then I'll put it right up here, but I got this light box. And back in the day when I first started with scrapbooking, I had one of these really cumbersome, bulky light boxes that was like a plastic, almost looked like a plastic desk with a big light bulb in it. And I was always afraid that I was gonna bust that light bulb. Well, nowadays it's just this thin LED sheet. It could practically be just like a piece of cardboard. It is so thin, it is so light, and this one is USB powered. It was very affordable, surprisingly, so I picked it up off of Amazon. So I'll link that for you guys. So initially, you may want to take a picture of something. I'm not suggesting that you trace someone else's work, but say you take a photograph of something, you print off your photograph, and you want to paint what you took a picture of. That's how I personally use this type of tracing, not necessarily for tracing other people's work. Just wanted to clarify that. Okay, so then we get into some of the other obvious items, right? Paintbrushes. So there's this one artist, I'm going to link her right here, and she's a mom, she works from home, and she creates these beautiful florals. And she uses very affordable brushes. I had seen these at Michael's, but I just kind of ignored them because they were such an inexpensive price, but when she showed the work she does with them, I was like, okay, I gotta try this. So I wanna say this set right here of 4 brushes was under $10 on Amazon. So again, I'll link it here. But these are called the Princeton Snap Brushes. So Princeton is very well known for a lot of their paint brushes. And this is probably one of their, if not their cheapest line of paint brushes they have. Now, the artist that I'm referring to, this is the exact ones she uses. She uses the ones with these white tips. Let me pull these out of here real quick. Okay, so that artist, she uses these exact ones, the ones with the white tips on them. And I did buy one more that she had as well, which is the round brush in a size 12. And she uses those for like her big washes across the page. And I was amazed at how inexpensive these brushes are, but what amazing work she does with them. And her style is really a lot of the kind of style that I like to develop. So I thought, you know what, I'll give those a try. Now, who's the other lady on here? I think Lindsay, the Frugal Crafter. She has a set of these too that she reviewed, but she reviewed the ones with like it's a red handle, I think, and the brushes are brown. It's the same, they're still called Snap, but they have 2 different colors that they provide in the handles. So some people don't care for the white because the white can get stained. But I'll show you the real reason why I loved this set. I already knew I wanted to use this cup that I've had for a long time, my cute little alpacas. You guys know me and my alpacas, and these just go with the set too perfectly. So that's my real reason for this particular color set. But also they had really, really good reviews. So I said, okay, I'm gonna give those a try. So those are my most affordable, cheapest brushes that I've bought. Then I also said, okay, let me try some others that might be a little more expensive that some others had recommended. And I was seeing a ton of videos on these. They're also by Princeton, but they're called Neptune. Now, another huge factor for me is a lot of these brushes that I'm sharing with you are synthetic. They are not sable. They're not squirrel hair. Just me personally, from what I've read on some of the brushes, I don't exactly know how the manufacturers are getting the animal fur on those brushes, so it kind of bothers me a little bit. Totally up to each person. But I thought, you know, with so many skilled artists recommending these synthetic brushes, I figured for nature, I'll go synthetic. And I'm not saying I would never try an animal brush, but for now, just to be on the safe side, I decided to go synthetic. So these are a little more expensive. I want to say that this set was closer to $40 for 4 brushes. So I think if you buy them individually at Michael's, they range anywhere from $7 to $10 per brush. And these are synthetic as well. But the way that they wash and the points on these is what people really recommend a lot. So I thought I'd give those a try as well. Then I went super, well, for me, at least on my budget, super high end. And I got 2 travel brushes. And these are from the Escada line. One is the Escada Perla, and that is this here. So it's another white tip brush, but this one is known for keeping its shape very well to really make it easy to do detail. I knew the brushes that I take with me on the go, I wanted to be pretty compact and small. So that is one of them. And then this is the Escada Versatile in size 6. And so some of the best watercolor artists that you see here on YouTube, they use this brand. These are handmade brushes from Spain, and they can range anywhere from, the Perlas are a little cheaper. I want to say they're like $15 to $25 each. And then the Versatiles, I want to say, are closer around $25 a piece. So I only bought one of each, and I think I'm going to get one Ultimo. Their Ultimo is their softest one. It's also synthetic, but that one I'm getting for more as a wash brush, probably in a size 10. And those will be my 3 travel brushes. Okay, so let's start from, say, the very beginning of a watercolor painting is going to be the drawing. So maybe you have a tracing paper, or a light box, or you're just going to freehand. At any case, you're going to need some pencils. So these are the Faber-Castell Graphite set. A lot of the artists in particular recommend the H series pencils because H is very light. So HB, 2H, 4H, those are very, very light graphite pencils. So I'll link the set that I got off of Amazon. It goes dark to light. You can use the darker ones as well, but again, you'll want to use probably a pigment pen liner over those pencil marks, because they will show through the watercolor. So if you don't want it to show through the watercolor, you'll want to use the lightest pencil you can find. And then let's talk about erasing. You'll probably, no matter what type of color pencil you use, you're going to want to erase some of it. So most of them recommend the kneaded eraser. So this is one of those that it's almost like putty. It's kneadable, but you can just stick it down on the paper like this and dab it. And it doesn't leave all those little pieces of eraser everywhere that you have to dust off your paper. And that can get stuck in the water and really mess up your drawing. But if you've drawn really hard, you can get, a typical white eraser. I have both in my little kit, but this is the one that most of the watercolor artists are recommending. Another type of pencil eraser that I've had over the years is this Mono Zero. We use this a lot in Japanese because kanji is Japanese is a very, tiny letters with tiny dashes and lines. So it takes a very fine eraser. So this is really great for erasing in between the flowers or those tiny details in your drawing. Now the other thing I added to this was some of these smudge sticks as well. I'll link these as well. I use these with Gamsol. This is more of the mixed media type, which is the type that I grew up with. This is the type I learned ever since junior high school, doing a base coat with watercolor and then going back into the drawing with detail with Prismacolor wax colored pencils, and then blending those wax colored pencils with Gamsol and the smudge sticks. Gamsol was easy for me to come by, but you can also use mineral spirits or some other types. Gamsol has been explained as being less dangerous than some others. I don't really know fact or fiction on that, but since it was easy for me to find and that's what I grew up with, that's what I purchased. These are some of the example of pigment pens that are waterproof. One is the Faber-Castell Pitt pen. The other one is by Zig. It's also Kuretake, but it's called Millennium. It's acid-free pigment ink archival. It's called Zig Millennium, I guess is the name of it. And all of these come in different thicknesses. So like the Faber-Castell is an extra small, whereas the Zig is a 0.5. And I also have a sepia set, so dark brown, by Micron. It's in another pencil case, so I don't have that right here at the moment. So this is the case that I keep all those items in. Again, this is from Danica Studios as well. It just stays on my desk. And all the duplicate pencils, And smudge sticks I put in a separate pencil case that I can take with me on the go if I want to at some point. In this box, since it's on my desk, I also include this little pipette. This is great for getting water out of my jar and putting it directly into the pans of my watercolors to, reconstitute them so they have water. I also have this from close to my heart. I've had this forever. I don't know how many of you remember this scrapbook company. They're still around, and I just fill it with water, and then it's a little mister, so I can just spray the page. And the last thing I have in here is this tool, and I forget what it's called, so I'll make sure to link it right there. But in essence, I dip this into my core masking fluid. So masking fluid is when you want to cover a certain area of your drawing that you want to make sure does not get any watercolor into it. You can protect it with masking fluid. And if you want to draw a clean line, you can use this tool by dipping it in that, and it'll write a very clean line for you. So this I keep in my pencil case. And then to go along with the masking fluid, I also have this, and Amazon will recommend this for you. It'll usually pair all three of these items for you together as soon as you pull up the masking fluid. This is called a glue and residue eraser. What happens is this easily picks up this material so that you don't damage your sheet too much by trying to pick it off with a fingernail or something. It sticks directly to this type of material easily, and this helps you remove it faster. Okay, so I showed the watercolors and watercolor pencils that I've had from over the years. But my very first, say, professional watercolor lesson, my aunt was taking professional watercolor lessons, and she brought me to a few of her classes as well. And what they were using were tubed watercolors. And I haven't used these ever since. That class was just enough to scare me to never use them again. But here I am. I saw how a lot of artists are using the tubes with the ceramic palettes. So I did get a ceramic palette. Let's see here. So I got this ceramic palette, and I'll be doing a video on setting up this ceramic palette. What I love about this is the weight. It is pretty heavy. It's not gonna go anywhere. So when you're mixing colors, this doesn't slide around on you. It has substantial weight, and it'll stay there. I did also get an inexpensive porcelain plate from Walmart. I want to say this was like $5. And this is just going to be my mixing palette on my desk. What's nice about those is if you watch a lot of artists, they use, certain colors that they have set up on their palette, and they don't wash it off. They don't always have to wash it off, because watercolor, all you have to do is re-wet it, and then you can use all that color again, so it doesn't go to waste. That's the wonderful thing about watercolor. It's not going to completely dry out on you. You're going to be able to use it again when you come back to it. So I thought I'd start with this set. Another reason why I chose Winsor & Newton, I know Daniel Smith is super popular right now. M. Graham, super popular right now. But I'm just a beginner, so I know when I was in Ecuador as well, this was the only brand we could find there. So I don't know for sure if we're going back, but I want to get familiar with supplies that I know I can use worldwide. This was the only brand in Ecuador. They had two brands, I'm sorry. They had Faber-Castell and they had Winsor & Newton products. No Prismacolor. A lot of the American brands do not exist down in South America, at least where we were, the areas where we were. So Winsor & Newton was everywhere. So they're a tried and true. They've been around forever. So I figured, okay, let me just go with the tried and true that I know is available in the regions where we've traveled to. So that's why I decided to start with them. So I'm starting with that basic set, but one color that is not included in that basic set is Payne's Gray. And you'll find in a lot of the mixing series videos that muted tone is really popular right now. And the way to get that is with Payne's Gray. So I did go ahead and buy one separate tube for that in particular. With the sketchbooks, I start with the Strathmore Mixed Media. I've used Strathmore books for years. Maybe some of you remember my beginning mixed media books, but in particular, the reason why this one is so great is this mixed media is 100% cotton. So watercolor flows best on 100% cotton paper. So even though this particular one is not 300, what do they call it, grams per square meters, even though this one is not the 300, but it's the 190, it still works well with watercolor because it is 100% cotton. So in some ways, this paper works better than, say, this one here, which is the Canson watercolor paper. This is the very inexpensive Canson watercolor paper. It is 140 pound, 300 gram weight, but this is not cotton. So you'll find that the watercolor will flow very differently on an all cotton paper versus a not cotton paper. This one will withstand more water, but this one, the color will flow better. So I thought I would try a little bit of both. So that's why this one is more for my mixed media, florals with acrylic paint, with watercolor florals. This will just be a little bit of everything, whereas this is pretty much going to be true watercolor and also colored pencil with a Gamsol. Now the other thing I'm going to try, it was given to me by Arteza last year and I just hadn't had time to use it yet, is they sent me this huge mixed media, 110 pound, 180 gram mixed media paper. Yeah, it's called a mixed media pad, 60 sheets. So this is what I'll probably do a lot of my swatches on, my test sketches. You'll probably see me do a lot in this as well. That will be like my initial step. And then this is really my final project book. So things that I make available that I'll be scanning and that I'll be making available to you guys on my shop will probably be done on the Arteza as well as the Canson, because those sheets are removable. And then I'll just demonstrate my final projects inside of this mixed media book. So those are my supplies that I decided to start with for watercolor. Again, I just wanted to have a video where I could reference you guys back to if you were wondering what supplies I was using. The beauty about, you know, the initial part of buying this is, yes, it can be expensive at first, but then you're able to, like some of these products I've had for years. My watercolor pencils I've had at least for 6 years at this point. As once as you have them, they last you a long time. Everything is coming out of your imagination and what you're able to draw. So you're not having to continue to buy tons and tons of supplies. Your brushes, if you get good quality brushes, are going to last you a long time. Your sketchbook, you know, average person probably goes through 2 sketchbooks a year at the most. And so I just hope that this helps invite you to also come along with me on the journey, and I look forward to seeing you soon. So if you enjoy watercolor too and you're doing the journey, please post below so I can see your works as well, or your Instagram. I'd love to see what you're creating. And if you want to see more videos like this, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time.